Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead of them and their companies. I'm your host, Olivia Salmons, and in each episode we'll uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today I'm excited to be joined by Mitchell Osmond, the founder behind Dad Nation, a movement and brand built to support fathers in showing up stronger, more present, and more intentional in both family life and leadership. Dad Nation challenges outdated ideas of fatherhood, encouraging men to lead at home with purpose, discipline, and emotional awareness, while balancing ambition, responsibility, and personal growth. Mitchell, welcome to Founders Future. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me, Olivia. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you and your listeners today.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you here, and it's such a pleasure. So let's dive into this. With all of my guests, I do actually like to start at the beginning of their journey. So if you don't mind taking me back to what it was that you was doing before you started up Dad Nation, and then from there, what was the motivation behind it?
Thank you for asking. That's a great starting point, because I think it's important to talk about that, because I think a lot of people can listen to podcasts like this and make the mistake of thinking that, oh, those people have it all figured out. They don't have problems. They don't understand. Let me be the first to tell you, I may have learned some things along the way, but I've only learned them because I've learned every lesson about the hardest way possible. And it's been a crazy journey of transformation and pain and all those different things. But let me tell you a little bit about maybe the turning point that kind of got me into this, because I didn't always plan to be a coach to men. I didn't plan to have a podcast, all those different things. I was always in leadership positions. And so I found myself, actually, to back up a little bit more, Olivia, I had come from a home of brokenness, dysfunction, a lot of drugs, alcoholism, crime, all those different things. And so I grew up in the middle of all that. And then I thought I had that dealt with. But when I got married, about 3 years into marriage, it all came to a halt. What I realized was that a lot of my unprocessed pain from my past was bleeding into my marriage. And I hit rock bottom, Olivia. Like we were 3 years in, and I was let go of my senior leadership position. I gained about 60 pounds. We were $100,000 in debt. I was medicating daily with drugs and alcohol to just cope. And me and my wife were at this point on the verge of divorce, like one fight away. It was the rock bottom of all rock bottoms. And so I'm in this moment, and then I get invited to sing at the funeral of this wealthy man. He was a philanthropist. And as I was getting ready to sing, I mean, there's about 2,000 people in the room. And I overhear the minister, after talking about all that this man had done, he had asked the congregation, are you living a life worthy of imitation? If you were to die today, would you be proud of the legacy that you left? And Olivia, at that point in my life, that question just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, if this were my funeral, there's no way that anyone would be looking at me and saying, I want to model the business or the marriage he had, or the health he had, or his finances, how he lived his life. They probably would have said at that point, man, he had a hard life and it ended too soon. It was a sad reality. But I was faced with my mortality. So I went home that day and I made a decision that I would die to whatever I needed to become the man, husband, and father that my family required of me. And so I went on a journey, and I brought in five men who inspired me. That they're like, my ceiling was their floor. You understand what I mean? They were living where I wanted to go, and they held me to this high standard that I said I wanted. They didn't let me fall. And within 18 months, within a year and a half, we completely paid off the $100,000 of debt, completely restored our marriage, lost the 60 pounds, and then became clean and sober and focused, and began to help other men in my life. And this happened, and I was doing this for 5 or 6 years, until one of my mentors challenged me. And he said, man, if you really want to have a lasting impact and leave a legacy, share all this with the world. Start a podcast. And so I launched the Dad Nation podcast. Within 6 months, it was a globally top-rated 5% podcast. And then I launched my coaching practice, because I had a bunch of listeners listening from all around the world. And they were like, hey, could you teach me all these things you learned? And so I launched my coaching practice. And then that was about a year ago. And it's been thriving. I heard a podcast by Ed Milet a little while ago, and he said, you are the most qualified to help the person you used to be. And for me, I love that. And that's all I do at the end of the day, is I help the person I used to be. You know, that industry professional, that entrepreneur, that leader who has seen success at work, professionally, but is struggling at home a little bit. Maybe he's disconnected with his wife. Maybe he's checking out, stressed or whatever. And yeah, that's what I do today. And that's how I got here.
I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that journey. And as you say, putting everything that you've learned along your way to good use now and just helping men achieve that same thing, figuring out what's going on with their marriage at home and really making it thrive, as you just said, which is really super important. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So we obviously mentioned there men, entrepreneurs, very successful in business, but maybe struggling a little bit at home. So how is it you help them and support them through that journey? What is it like to work with you, Mitchell?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. What I tell people is I help high performing men or career driven men reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness. So I focus on three areas. I'm not a business coach. I'm not going to teach you how to build your business. I
Yeah.
work with businesses. I work with business executives, but on the other side. You understand what I mean? And so when I say home, health, and happiness, I'm talking about all things when it comes to your home, like your key relationships, relationship with your partner, relationship with your children, how to restore your marriage, how to have a passionate marriage, how to be present and so focused with your children. And when I talk about health, I'm talking about your fitness, your nutrition, your exercise. Because a lot of guys will come to me they've built the business and they've got that success, but maybe they've gained 60 pounds in the process, or they got a bad health diagnosis, or their wife said, hey, I'm not happy anymore, or whatever. So that's the health piece. The happiness is all about mindset. And so we talk a lot about how to eradicate limiting self-beliefs. And you would know, and your listeners would know, as an entrepreneur and a business leader, that imposter syndrome is real, right? And that self-sabotager is real. And so what do you do when that comes up? And also, how do you eliminate those self-limiting beliefs and dig into our past? Because that was what was affecting me. It took me, we know that 80% of the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world is shaped before we're 12 years old. That's why we have to look to our past to understand our present. And for example, for me, it took me 3 years to get the courage to launch the podcast. Olivia, I was writing content for 3 years. I have a Google Doc of over 600 pages of frameworks and details and content because I just didn't have the courage to take the step because I was dealing with this imposter syndrome. And so what I do in the mindset piece is I help men eradicate all that and build strong, bulletproof confidence to really go for it. Because oftentimes the only thing that's stopping us from getting really what we desire the most is us. We get in our own way. So that's the home, health, happiness piece.
Love it. And as you say, imposter syndrome affects everybody, no matter
Totally.
how amazing they think their life is. They'll always have that impact come in, and that's for that to be the first thing you help with is incredible because it just, as you say, opens up the world from there. And then, Mitchell, I'm curious to see about how you go about acquiring your customers. So, like, when it comes to like channels and methods, what are you really finding most effective in finding that right person to work with?
That's a great question. And it's very timely because when I launched the business, I came in at the tail end of, not the tail end, and people are still doing it, but I built my business 100% on Instagram. Okay. So I would
Okay.
launch follower ads and people would follow me. And then in the beginning, I'd reach out to all the new followers. Be, hey, name's Mitch. Great to meet you. What made you follow me? What resonated with you? Da, da, da. And I have a sales conversation over DMs. I book them
Nice.
on a sales call, and then I sell my package to them on the call. Now, but that worked really well up until about 6 months ago. Instagram released some sort of AI update. And then I don't know if you heard about this, but it actually swept through the entire algorithm and the entire database and wiped out 10 million creator accounts. Mine was one of them. So my Instagram got shut down for 4 months, which means all of my client acquisition, lead generation was shut down. I didn't have an email list. I had nothing. So I had sales teams in the DMs. I was doing it all till the business just turned off overnight. And so when I got it back, because it was a totally bogus thing, it wasn't actually real. But when I got my account back, I decided that I really needed to pivot because I built my business on rented land. You understand what I mean? It was all fine and good, but once Zuckerberg decides to pull the plug, he
Yeah.
can, and you got nothing. And so for me, how I pivoted then was I don't run ads on Instagram anymore. I don't do the DM thing. I moved to podcasts, to marketing or talking about my services on podcasts and also through Substack and YouTube and other areas where you can get
Yes.
that long form content because in my niche, that's really what you can't explain how to have a better marriage in an Instagram caption. You understand what I mean? And that's what I did. And my mentor said to me, he was like, listen, while your Instagram is down, jump on other people's shows, because the reason why this is so effective is because, and if you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur and you want to get your brand, like get brand exposure and clients, you're borrowing the trust of the person you're on the show with. For example, if the show host, like if you had 10,000 listeners, just by virtue of me being on the show, you have trust by association, because those 10,000 people don't trust you. And so now this guy must be great because he's on the show. He jumps over, they jump over, listen to my podcast, listen to my, or check out my website, boom. And then what happens is you have this is a warmer lead, and you got them through, if you're having a conversation on a podcast, you get to talk about what you're doing for 20 minutes to an hour. And yeah, by the time they come talk to you, they're already so much warmer than like a cold outreach via DM. Not to mention, it's totally free to follow someone. And the fact is, when someone follows you, just because they follow you doesn't mean that they want to hire you. So you draw naturally a lot of tire kickers, which in my industry is not really what you need. You want to genuinely help people, and that comes at a cost, right?
Yeah, so true. And I feel like there might be a lot of lists out there that can really resonate with that, because it's not all about having all your eggs in one basket, which unfortunately, as you mentioned there, once that rented land gets taken away, what are you going to do? Let's get creative and let's find out, let's take that next step. And podcasts are amazing. There are like virtual coffee dates. It's like going out the old-fashioned way of networking, but you're able to do that with a pool of people that are all over the world. As you say, like building that trust from someone that's already had that trust factor. I love it. And if someone's already listened into an hour of you speaking, they're most likely going to want to work with you, because to have that, like, I know, trust factor in their head already, incredible. And so have you managed to build up the team then, Mitch, or are you still a solopreneur at the moment? Like, how is that back end looking for you at the moment?
Yeah, and so that's another change I've made. When the Instagram got shut down, I laid the team off, and then now I'm going as lean as possible. So just me and one
Okay.
other person. I'm heavily invested into AI solutions and automating, systematizing, streamlining everything. I'm even changed my programs. I used to do all one-to-one coaching. Now it's one-to-many. I have a program called the High Performance Husband, which is a group coaching program. I built an entire curriculum that men can follow to pretty much everything that I taught my one-to-ones. Clients is in that program. And then we do group calls. And so I've 10x'd my increase, my impact, because I'm helping so many more men simultaneously. And then even going back to the podcast piece, when I was thinking about doing this, my mentor was like, bro, you have a top 5% globally rated podcast. Why aren't you talking about your services on the show? You have thousands of people who listen all around the world. Why aren't you leveraging that? And I was like, I had this like duh moment of what? And so now I would say phase 2.0 is entirely different. I went to
Yeah.
one platform, one-to-one coaching, which was exhausting because I was on back-to-back calls for hours every single day. And then when I wasn't on calls, coaching calls, I was living in the DMs, which was exhausting, to having leveraging 3 or 4 different things and not having to be obsessed with Instagram, then also helping 20 people at the same time instead of one. So it's been a powerful shift in my business.
It has, and a great pivot by the sounds of it, something that's really, as you say, aided you in the right way, which is really cool. I suppose you didn't want to have to go through that to see it, but definitely, would you say they're better off having gone through it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was the most painful mistake I've ever made. And it was an expensive one when it comes to lost income, but it was incredible because now everything is different, but it's so much better. Like
Yeah.
now it's the life that we talk about, the entrepreneur life, the freedom piece. Before, I was still 9 to 5. In fact, I was probably 9 to 9. But I just, the only thing was it was my clients and my time. It wasn't some other boss, but I was still a slave. Make no
No.
mistake.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of other listeners out there that do find themselves in that position, having that glorified job and not being able to pivot or to change out of that, because sometimes as a founder, you do end up working even more than a 9 to 5. You're still
Mhm.
getting not the same rewards from it. But then, obviously, Mitchell, with that being said, now that the pivot's been made, what do your plans look like for the future? So, what do the next 6 to 12 months have in store for you? What is that vision moving forward when you think of it?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I've learned a lot in the last 6 months. I've also paid a lot to learn from other people who are much smarter and wiser than me. And one big common theme and thread I'm seeing in my own space, but also the mentors and coaches I've hired, is that people are done with fake. They're done with quick reels, like quick grabs, because of this influx of AI, because anyone can be faceless and be an influencer, but anyone can get fooled. There is a massive trust recession that's happening. Trust is at an all-time low. You can't just launch a course and sell it anymore like you used to be able to. You can't just launch an Instagram account, sell a coaching package over the DMs anymore, because everyone assumes you're a bot, and rightfully so. And so what myself and so many others in this space are doing is actually the opposite of what we've been doing in the last 10 years. Is instead of short form content, instead of low touch, high tech, meaning I don't talk to you, I just sell you, it's actually quite the opposite now. And it's like, I'm digging into long form content. I'm digging into the podcast. I'm digging into real, like in person mastermind sessions, because people are craving human interaction more than ever before. They're craving an authentic conversation. And so if someone can listen to you on a podcast and hear you fumble over your words, they know you're not a robot. If they can come to an in-person mastermind weekend or a group coaching where there's other human beings on the call that aren't bots, then they're really excited about that. And so the phrase that I've been saying to a lot of people is immersion leads to conversion. So that's the name of the game. How can you get clients immersed in your content so that you will be able to convert them into your digital products or whatever it is you sell? Because trust is at an all-time low. Immersion creates trust because we don't inherently trust people anymore. And so for me, it's digging into the long form content. The Substack account I recently just started, it's all long form writing that people get immersed in your writing. It's in-person masterminds, weekends, and it's group coaching calls where we're real human beings on calls, rather than just trying to sell people on some course or sell people on some low funnel product where they never talk to you again, or even try to market someone or to acquire a lead over DM. Now, is it still working? Yes, it is for some. I would question what the ROAS is on some of these things on your ad spend in that model, because I started to see significantly diminishing returns in the DMs because everyone just ghosted you because they assumed you weren't real, and rightfully. And so that's the shift that I'm making. That's the shift I've seen so many others in my circles start to make, is how can we be more real, exposed, raw with people so they can see who we really are. And that immersion leads to conversion piece is huge. And how can we show them who we are as a human being, and then have them in our space? And then that sale comes a lot easier because they genuinely know you, like you, and trust you, right?
Yep. And it is all about that know and trust factor. And it is the great thing about long form content, whether it is a podcast, a YouTube video, it is the fact that you, as you mentioned, you've got someone in your head talking to you, stumbling over their words, yes, but literally talking to you for about an hour. And if you have that, you, of course, they're gonna know and trust you moving forward because they've managed to spend that time to really understand who you are as a person, hear your voice, know that it's a real person behind you, and move forward from there. And the world needs a little bit more human connection. I'm here for it. It's definitely the way that it needs to go moving
Yeah,
forward.
it ain't a bad thing.
No, it's really not. So I'm here for that. And Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your incredible journey and insight with us. Where can our listeners reach out to work with you, connect with you, and check out the podcast and all the great stuff that you're doing at the moment as well?
Thank you for asking, Olivia. Yeah, you can just go to the dadnationco.com. That's my website. There's a ton of free resources there. There's some paid stuff there. You'll find the podcast there. Honestly, if you just Google the Dad Nation, you'll see my face everywhere. And the podcast is called the Dad Nation Podcast. And like I said, I have men who listen from literally all around the world. I was talking to a guy from Korea a couple of weeks ago who was just so impacted by one of the frameworks I shared. And so it was just really humbling to know that there's literally people over there that are being impacted, right? And I would encourage you to do that. And also, if you're listening to this and you're a woman, then 25% of my listeners are women, because they want to understand the mind of their husband or their partner on a deeper level. And they find it very useful. And a lot of the times, the tactics and the frameworks that I teach on the show are just universally applicable, like their business strategies, their growth strategies, but they apply to women as well. But anyways, that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. The Dad Nation. And yeah, I'm here for it. Women should be paying attention as well. So everyone listening, go and check it out. You'll learn a lot. And do not forget to subscribe to Founders Future via wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or agency owner, and you're really looking to scale your business and you want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with one of our team and discover how we went from $0 to $30 million per year in less than 3 years. But until then, keep on climbing, and we will see you on the next one.